Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. This is David Bianco. Let's start with a little Jeopardy today. This album was released on December 8th, 1976, and the awaiting of a new reissue in audiophile format has been keeping the vinyl community awake at night since November of 2021. What album is it? Oh crap! Before we get started today, I wanted to promote a channel, Concert Buddie. He's got a great YouTube channel that has a lot of diversity. He does great interviews. He's also one of the leaders that started the Vinyl Community podcasts. You should check those out. So give this channel a chance, Concert Buddie. So what album is it? Well, as you can see, Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can't never leave. I think everybody knows that line and knows where it came from. So this album is really one that is a classic, a true classic. Everybody knows Hotel California. Just say the name. It's synonymous with this band. And so this being their most popular album, when the series was announced for the catalog to come out on the Ultradisc One-Steps, this particular announcement came out in August of 2021, and we had the first self-titled released on the 15th of August, and Desperado, the second album, on September 15th. These were really a launch pad for this series. Now, myself, I went ahead and ordered Hotel California and the first albums 1 and 2. I didn't order On the Border at the time, but I definitely ordered Hotel California because that's definitely the one that I'm most interested in, and the first album are my favorites. And so it has been an experience to listen to these albums in this format, on this vinyl, with this methodology. We all know what happened with Mobile Fidelity later in 2022 when everything came apart in terms of their process. Now, when I read the press releases again when these were announced in August of 2021, it is very, very clear that the wording was such that you really obviously didn't know there was a digital step involved, and they really were focused on the high quality nature of what they were delivering. In the end, the way these things sound is really the judgment that needs to be made. If in fact one has a problem with it, which I did in terms of business and transparency and letting your customers know and really touting the fact that part of the reason for what they did was based on the availability of tapes and the fact that tapes are aging and we needed to capture them in their current state for the longest period of time possibly. But that's not what this review is about. At the end of the day, the first two releases were fabulous and really, in my mind, took away any of the doubts that one might have had of can this new DSD methodology to vinyl deliver a high quality outcome? And the answer was firmly yes. And there have been others that have come out that have also proven the point. One of these nights is one that I did get, and it too was really over the top. And so for me, this was one that I really expected a home run on in order to really expose the fact that this can be a high quality delivered product with the process that they have decided to do. Now, Hotel California has a special memory for me. It came out just before Christmas 1976.
What do you want for Christmas, little boy?
My mind had gone blank.
And in our household when I was a kid, we used to have Christmas at our house with the extended family every 4th year. Those were rotated among my dad's brothers and sister. And so we always ended up on the year, which was in fact always the presidential election. So 1976 was the year, and I had this album, and I remember distinctly playing it on Christmas Eve. And as I was playing this album, we had a small fire that occurred in the house. And we had to call the fire department. They came in. It was snowy. We lived up near Chicago. The firemen, instead of coming in our side door to go downstairs where the problem was, came in the front door and traipsed all over my mom's carpet. She was going crazy. And I'm playing this album in the background. And after they put the fire out, one of the firefighters said, "Hey, who's that record? I haven't heard this song before." And I handed the album to him and showed him. He didn't know that they had released a new record. So for me, this is kind of like brings back that memory immediately when I look at the cover or hear songs off of the album. So everybody has a story to tell. And so this album coming out in a new high fidelity format, I've been waiting for. And so what are my impressions? Well, I'm comparing it to several other versions, and those are, in fact, the original. I have an original Santa Maria press, Columbia Santa Maria, and it was mastered by Lee Hulko. I have a Legacy box, which is the huge box set of Eagles records that is mastered by Bernie Grundman. I was loaned a copy of a 2009 release on Asylum, and it was mastered by Kevin Gray, 2009 cut at Acoustic. And then, of course, I have the One-Step. So listening to these, I got a broad array of experiences with listening to these. The Kevin Gray I had not heard before. A friend of mine, Rush Brad, loaned that to me. And I appreciate that very much because it is an impressive cut. And we'll talk more about it. But it really did add another dimension to this Shootout. But I want to start with the most obvious question. So how was the MOFI? Well, the MOFI is fantastic. It had hit me just like the first one had hit me when the self-titled came out. I heard things more distinctly. I heard a better sound stage. I heard more openness than I really had ever heard before. And so for me, they've continued the trend with these Eagle releases. Krieg Wunderlich has done a wonderful job mastering this and extrapolating from the tapes the best of this recording. Now, I'll tell you a little secret, and that is that from day one when I had this album, when I got it in 76, I was never all that satisfied with the sound of it. I always felt like there was more sound to it, that there was a better sound to it, that there were things left on the cutting room floor, so to speak, as you would say, in movies. I mean, I just felt like they hadn't eked out of what was recorded, because you could tell how well this was recorded, but it just never fully translated. Now, it was a decent pressing. It sounded good, but it really didn't sound great, in my opinion. And I always felt that that was the case. The other issue is, and I say this often, is, and I think that some people, I don't understand it honestly, people go back to originals and they never talk about the noise level, the fact that it's not as quiet as some of this newer vinyl. And it is a factor. And so, for me, that also is something that makes a recording less pleasing to listen to, especially when you get into songs like The Last Resort, which is the final track on the album that has some quiet passages. You really, want to kind of listen to that song, especially with the theme and all, with a very clean kind of sound. And of course, you get that when you listen to it on a CD or a digital format. But on vinyl, you really want to have that. So I have always felt that there was more to be brought out of this. And I would say that all of these other pressings did just that. But at the end of listening to all of it, the MOFI really is at the top of that level. And I'm going to give you some numbers that relate to my ratings at the end to show you what I thought. I believe that the Kevin Gray 2009 is very close, actually. And if I was going to say you want to spend $30 to buy that, which you can't anymore. When it came out, it was about $30 or even $25, but now it's up $75, $80, $90 to pick that up. But that record at that price of the day was a great value. And it's a 33 1/3, so you don't have to flip it except once like a regular record. So it has that going for it as well, and it is reasonably quiet. So I was really impressed by this Kevin Gray cut from 2009, which I really hadn't been exposed to until I did this Shootout today. So again, I thank Brad for that, because it did show what can be done with the right mastering engineer involved. So for me, as I said, the original always had something lacking to it. The Bernie Grundman cut from the Legacy box is very interesting because it is very different than Kevin Gray's. It really is a softer, and I don't mean less loud, I mean a smoother sound with not as much brightness or top end on it, and it has a really different feel to it. It has a better feel than the OG, except that the top end is just a little bit too short of the mark. And I know that because I can hear it in the Kevin Gray, and I can hear it in the One-Step from MOFI. So the Bernie Grundman is a very relaxed master. And so it's interesting to me because you can start to see the differences in approach, the way these mastering engineers attack these projects and what have you. But it is a notably different sound to it, and it does have a relaxed tone to it. And there are a few places in the album where I think the original recording can be pushed a bit to where it can have a little bit of top end excess, just a slight bit. Like Life in the Fast Lane, those guitars come in pretty hard, and they can be a little, they can hit you a little in a way that maybe isn't a pleasing sound, but it's gritty. And I think that's what's really there. And the Bernie Grundman has kind of smoothed that out a little bit, which in some ways takes away the driving aggressiveness of a song like Life in the Fast Lane, because that's really, the nature of that song. So a very interesting stylistic difference in the mastering there. And I'd say it's pronounced through both of those across their respective albums. All the songs kind of have that same impact, with the Kevin Gray being very driving, very clean top end, and very rich in that regard. And Bernie's being a little more subtle and a little more pushed back a bit to where it isn't in attack mode, so to speak. Now the MOFI is kind of in attack mode with a little bit of an exclamation point after it. And Krieg, I think, really said, okay, we're just going to go swing for the fences, so to speak, the old baseball analogy. We're going to really try to hit this one out of the park and make this something that people remember, something that people will say, that got me. And I think that that's the effect that has happened. I had the same impression and effect with One of These Nights, Desperado, and the self-title. And I can remember that for self-title, when I first put that on, it was like that first strum and it hit, and it was like, wow. And Bernie Leadon's banjo, just kind of being pulled out to where you could, it's like Bernie was sitting in the chair by the speaker. I mean, it just, and I've got an OG of that first pressing on the original Eagles, Asylum white label. So, that is one that, I never thought could be bested, but it was. And I'd say in this case, this one gives that Kevin Gray a good run for its money and exceeds it in most departments, to be honest with you. And, the biggest disadvantage to these whether it's a UHQR or a one-step, is 45 RPM and having to get up and, you only get 2 songs a side. That's I guess the physical activity of our hobby is getting up and changing those records. So the MOFI to me is a no-brainer in that regard. I mean, if you've got this Kevin Gray 2009, and I think the DCC would probably be similar that Kevin and Steve Hoffman had cut, but I haven't heard it, so I can't say definitively. And it was done much earlier, I think in the 90s. And so this is, in fact, a place where you say, okay, if I don't really care for doing this 45 RPM thing, that 2009 Kevin Gray is as solid as you can get. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I was really taken aback. I mean, I expect the one-step to really be at the top of the game and up there because of the nature of what they're trying to do. Whereas this other release is a standard store-bought release. This is one that had that silver HQ 180 logo on it, and it said Preston RTI, which it was. And those came out, a whole series of those. I remember seeing Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith as well, and I wish I would have picked every one of them up when I saw them at the time. And so I would say, you're pretty golden with that. If you want to hear it just one notch better, the one-step will take you there. There's no doubt about that. So kudos to Craig Winderlich, kudos to MOFI for doing this and getting it right. I'd say that if you have aspirations to have a top copy of this, then this is the one to get. Again, if you've got that 2009 Kevin Gray, you're in really solid company with that as well. And that, for me, was really a breath of fresh air for me. The Bernie box set, it's the box set, so I haven't listened to the rest of them. I'm going to do that now and compare like one of these nights and the first album and see if they have that same characteristic of being softer. I hadn't opened this box set until now for this Shootout, so I'll be interested to see if that approach carries across the other records as well. So here we go, as promised, for those of you who have stuck around, the rating chart that I put together for the comparisons of the Hotel California release. So you'll see there in the first row, we have the original pressing, which was done at Columbia Santa Maria. And again, this was mastered originally by Lee Hulko. And so on the quietness of the vinyl, I give it a 6. Not super quiet at all, not super noisy, but definitely noisier than the others that were in the comparisons. On the actual areas of what I looked at, the low end, the mid-range, and the top end, I gave it 8s across the board. Very consistent, but again, as I said, I felt always from the start there was more that could have been gleaned out of this record from the beginning. The next one I have listed is this one that I borrowed today, the 2009 Asylum. They called it HQ 180, this vinyl that they make out at RTI for these pressings, and the fact that it was done there and mastered by Kevin Gray, a great series that had come out in the latter 2000s, in the first decade there. And so on the quietness of the vinyl, we get an 8 there. So definitely an improvement in that area. And then when we get into the actual recording and these, the bass and the lows and the mid-range and treble, solid 9s across the board. Really a well-done record and a very notable improvement to the OG. And as I said, surprisingly excellent, punchy, crisp, clean vocals. Very enjoyable record. Next, I have the Bernie Grundman master from the Legacy Boxset. And on the quietness of the vinyl, it also gets an 8. It's decently quiet, definitely quieter than the original. On the bass and low end, it's a 7. It's not quite as good as the original in that department, nor is it quite as good in the mid-range. It is a little stronger in the mid-range than the bottom end on its own recording, because they're trying to make it a little bit warmer, I think. And then we get to the top end, it falls off to a 7, because you can tell there you're not getting the same kind of sound from cymbal hits and other brighter type sounds in the album. They're much more recessed. So it has a warmer, more relaxed, and less precise sound to it overall. And then lastly, of course, most importantly for this particular review, with the One-Step being the release and the reason for doing this shootout, Craig Wunderlich, and this was pressed at RTI, Craig mastered this for MOFI. The vinyl gets a 9, very quiet, very, very quiet. The bass in the low end gets a 9.5. Matter of fact, all of them do. The mid-range and the treble, just a little notch better than that Kevin Gray. The only negative I found was a little pre-echo on the beginning of the lead-in track on side 4, where a rotation before getting into the actual song, you could hear it coming. But other than that, really solid marks across the board for this album. And I hope this relative scale gives you some idea of the distinctions. So for now, those are my impressions. I hope you enjoyed them. As always, if you haven't subscribed, it's free, by the way. Just got to click on the bell, pick the all option for notifications, and please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, because that helps the algorithm. And any comments you have, any questions, please put them in the comments and I will get back to you. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on our next Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. Take care, everybody.